Leave. Now. That's how it began, not with a warning, not with a discussion, but an order from the man whose name was on every paycheck in the building. The CEO's voice cut through the glass-walled conference room like a gavel. I stood there, badge still clipped to my blazer, heart steady in a body that refused to tremble. Across the table, his son, Mason Wilmot, leaned back in his chair with that smug half-smile he wore like a family heirloom. Helena from HR avoided my eyes, pretending to read the paper she'd already signed. "You made him feel inferior," Robert Wilmot said, each word measured, heavy, rehearsed. "That's harassment." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. 12 years of clean audits, record deliveries, and mentoring half his staff. And this was what it came to feelings. Mason finally spoke, voice dripping with false politeness. "We just need this resolved. Evelyn, maybe an apology." For a second, the world went quiet, the hum of the fluorescent lights, the distant click of keyboards beyond the door, everything stilled. I saw Mason's reflection in the glass wall behind him, confident, untouchable. I saw mine 2 tired eyes, but unbroken. I unclipped my badge, set it on the table, and met the CEO's stare. "You want quiet? You'll have it." Then I looked at Mason directly, deliberately. "But it won't last." He frowned, as if uncertain whether he'd heard a threat or a prophecy. I turned, walked out, and the door clicked shut behind me. That sound echoed all the way down the hallway, the sound of a system about to crack. That night, long after the office lights went dark, I sat at my kitchen table, the laptop screen washing my face in cold blue. Folders opened, logs appeared, screenshots loaded. If they wanted silence, I'd give them something far louder. And as the first file uploaded, I realized this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of theirs. The day before everything fell apart began like every other. I arrived at 7:30 sharp, coffee in hand, the warehouse still half asleep. My name badge clicked against the keypad as I logged in. 12 years in operations had turned precision into habit coffee. Reports, freight schedules, vendor calls. I was invisible by design. The work ran so smoothly, no one noticed who kept it that way. At 9, my junior analyst, Danny, poked her head into my office. "We hit 99.6% on-time shipments," she said, grinning. "You're basically a machine." "Machines break down," I replied. "That's why we check every detail." She laughed, but I could see the pride in her eyes. I'd trained her to think like that. When she left, I opened my inbox. A single subject line sat at the top. "New Leadership Integration Monday Meet and Greet." I clicked. "Please join us in welcoming Mason Wilmot as co-lead of Operations Optimization. Mason brings fresh ideas from the innovation sector and will partner with Evelyn Ward to modernize our systems." Partner. The word stuck in my throat. He wasn't from logistics. He was from LinkedIn, the kind of man who called chaos creativity. I searched his name pictures of him in conference panels, talking about vibe-driven leadership and agile synergy. When Helena from HR passed my doorway later, I asked, "How long have you known about this hire?" She smiled too quickly. "It's exciting." "Right. The CEO's son bringing new energy." "Energy," I repeated. "That's one word for it." That afternoon, I found Danny by the loading docks. "New leadership announced," I told her. Her smile faltered. "Another consultant." "Worse," I said. "Family." She winced. "Does he know how we actually move freight?" "He'll learn." I answered, though the words tasted like dust. I looked out over the rows of trucks, all lined up in quiet precision, 12 years of order built bolt by bolt. Somewhere, a storm was gathering, and by the time it hit, I'd already be standing in its eye. Mason arrived 12 minutes late to his first team meeting. The door swung open mid-sentence while I was reviewing shipment variances. He didn't apologize. He dropped his backpack on the table and grinned like he'd walked into a party. "All right, team," he said, clapping once. "Let's shake off those legacy fumes. We're building something fresh here." Trina, one of the analysts, glanced at me. No one laughed. I kept my tone even. We were just covering carrier efficiency for Q2. Mason nodded, pretending to listen. Efficiency's fine, but we need energy. Clients don't just buy deliveries, they buy experience. I folded my hands. Hospitals buy stability, not excitement. He smirked. See, that's the old paradigm talking. We'll get along great once we loosen up. By the end of the meeting, he'd overwritten half my agenda with slogans. The analysts looked confused but polite. I ended it early to spare them. Later, a Slack notification pinged. Mason tagged you in operations revamp. Evelyn's process map is solid, but I'm rebranding it into a momentum grid. Let's get creative. Team. He attached my spreadsheet, my exact formula renamed and shared. I stared at the screen until my pulse steadied, then took a screenshot and filed it in a folder labeled Internal Records. The next day, I caught him near the break area with Danny. Your presentation was fire, he told her. You must kill it in heels. Danny froze, searching for a polite way out. I stepped between them. Danny, we need to review the temperature logs before dispatch. She nodded quickly and left. Mason leaned against the counter, unbothered. You always this intense when it keeps people safe, I said. He shrugged, sipping his smoothie. Safety's important, but culture matters too. Culture doesn't keep refrigerated vaccines from spoiling. I replied and walked away before I said more. That night, I opened my private folder again. Screenshots, timestamps, compliance notes, quiet proof that words were becoming weapons. Charm was his armor. Mine was documentation. The email arrived at 7:48 a.m., wrapped in soft language and fake warmth. To ensure a healthy culture, HR will be conducting brief one-on-one climate sessions this week. No preparation needed, just bring your authentic self. I read it twice, then flagged it unread. Nothing good ever came from authentic self in corporate language. By noon, the whispers began. Danny caught me in the stairwell between shipments. Helena's asking weird things, she said, voice low. She asked if you ever, raise your voice. I blinked. Have you ever seen me raise my voice? Danny shook her head. That's what I told her. She just smiled and said, Noted. On the 3rd floor, I passed Trina clutching her notebook. They asked if you make us nervous, she muttered, eyes wide. Why would they even... It's fine, I cut in softly. Just answer honestly. Her look said she knew it wasn't fine. That afternoon, I walked by the glass atrium and stopped. Through the reflection, I saw them, Helena from HR and Mason Wilmot, leaning close over coffee, laughing like conspirators. Her hand brushed his sleeve. He said something, and she touched his arm again, smiling too brightly. A chill ran through me. Back in my office, I closed the door and scrolled through my folders, each screenshot, each timestamp. My hand hovered over the newest file, PulseCheck script draft PDF. I hadn't written it, but I knew what it was, a rehearsal. I texted Danny, if HR calls you again, record your recollection immediately after, date and time. She replied instantly, Is this bad? It's moving. I wrote back, down the hall. Laughter erupted again. Mason's easy, careless tone mixing with Helena's. The sound hit like static under my skin. The machinery had started. Not loud yet, but deliberate. Gears turning behind glass doors while everyone pretended not to hear them. I saved a new note in my private folder, Helena Moore. Meeting patterns increased contact with Mason, day 3 consecutive. The meeting invite came late on a Thursday afternoon. Touchpoint regarding team dynamics mandatory. No agenda, no attachments. Just a room number. When I entered, Helena from HR was already there, posture too straight to be casual. Mason sat beside her, smiling like this was some routine check-in. Then I noticed the 3rd chair, Robert Wilmot, the CEO, my boss's father. He didn't belong in these meetings. That was the point. Evelyn, Helena began. Tone sugary. We've received a concern about your interactions with Mason. I set my notebook down carefully. What kind of concern? Mason spoke before she could. You keep correcting me in front of the team. he said, voice smooth. It makes it hard to lead when I feel undermined. I looked at him evenly. You rerouted perishable freight through a flood zone last week. I corrected data that would have lost the company $200,000 in spoiled product. Robert's jaw tightened. That's not what's in question. It's tone. Evelyn. You made him feel inferior. That's harassment. The word landed heavy, deliberate. A weapon disguised as policy. Helena slid a paper across the table, the same form I'd seen in rumors, the one that said, Acknowledgement of Conduct Review. If you could sign this, we can move forward, she said. I stared at the line, waiting for my name. Then I met Robert's eyes. You're calling competence harassment. Mason shifted, looking uneasy for the first time. His father cut in. We're calling it disruption. I stood slowly. Then consider me disruptive. Helena's voice trembled. Evelyn, please. Robert's tone hardened. Leave. Now. I unclipped my badge, placed it gently on the table, and said nothing. As I walked out, Mason exhaled relief, arrogance, maybe both. I paused at the door just long enough for him to see the faintest curve of a smile. No tears, no apology, just the quiet certainty that they had no idea what silence could do. I didn't turn on the lights when I got home. The dark was cleaner, quieter. My shoes stayed by the door, my badge still in my hand, useless now, but heavy with memory. I made coffee I didn't need and sat at the table, laptop open, screen glow sharp against the window. The folder weighted internal records. I had built it piece by piece, screenshots, Slack logs, meeting notes, emails no one thought I kept. I opened one at random. Mason's message to Danny. You must kill it in heels. I remembered the way she'd smiled tightly, pretending not to hear it. Another file showed his innovation plan, copied word for word from my logistics model. A timestamp. A pattern. Then I found something else, a Slack thread from 2 months ago. Mason had replied to my rooting memo with a thumbs-up emoji. Attached beneath it, HR flag, Emily Behavior Report, confidential, PDF. It wasn't meant for public channels. I clicked. Inside were names, comments, private HR notes about a junior analyst. Mason had attached it by mistake, then left it there for everyone to see. No retraction, no apology. I'd archived it then, not realizing what it would become. I opened another folder, company policy updates. Buried halfway down was the revision I'd memorized during last quarter's audit, Clause 12.43. In cases where harassment claims involve executive, family, or hierarchical conflict, liability extends to all approving HR personnel and supervising officers if neutral arbitration is bypassed. My pulse steadied. I scrolled to a blank incident form inside the compliance portal, one most managers never touched. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed, word for word, Incident Flag Clause 12.4.3 Trigger Executive Family Involvement. The cursor blinked, waiting. I pressed save, but didn't send. Not yet. Outside. The street was silent. Inside. The company's own rules stared back at me. Cold and exact, the kind that didn't care about titles or family names. By dawn, they would. The alert left my laptop before I had time to change my mind. One click, one pulse through the company's compliance network, silent, invisible, irreversible. At 4:18 a.m., miles away in Wilmot's downtown office, the first notification hit, Don Sir, Company Counsel, was half asleep on his couch when his phone buzzed twice. He told me later he almost ignored it, thinking it was another vacation request gone wrong. But the words on his screen made him sit upright. Clause 12.4.3, Trigger Executive Family Involvement. He opened his laptop. The compliance dashboard flashed red. Attached was Mason's Slack thread with the confidential HR file. Metadata intact. Don didn't speak. He didn't even curse. He simply typed Legal Escalation Priority 1 and sent it to the internal counsel chain. By 6, HR inboxes were filling with copied alerts. The system didn't need permission to escalate. It was built that way after the company's last scandal. Helena's phone lit up with 32 unread messages before sunrise. At 7, I sat at my kitchen table, coffee cold, watching my email refresh. Nothing yet. That was how I knew it had worked. When systems are running, they make noise. When they crash, they go silent. Across town, Helena was in her office, voice shaking over the speakerphone. It's a false trigger. Right. Some kind of error. Dawn's voice stayed level. Not an error. The metadata shows executive overlap. It's live. In another line, the CFO joined, already furious. How long has this file been public? Dawn answered. 2 months, 23 days, 17 hours. A printer somewhere in the legal department hummed to life, spitting out the automated incident summary. Mason's name, Helena's signature, Robert Wilmot's approval, all verified. Mason was still asleep, unaware his father's company had just flagged him under its own liability clause. I closed my laptop slowly, a small tremor running through my hands. The fuse was lit now. I didn't need to push anything further. All I had to do was wait for them to smell the smoke. By 9 that morning, the building felt colder. The elevator skipped my floor entirely. HR was locked in crisis mode. I waited in the small lounge outside legal, my phone face down on the table. Through the wall, I could hear muffled voices clipped, urgent. Inside the conference room, Don Sayre sat at the head of a beige table surrounded by people who hadn't spoken to each other outside of email in years. To his left was Linda from Risk, flipping a pen over her fingers. To his right, Helena from HR, pale and rigid. The CFO, Harris, leaned forward, both hands flat on the table. Dawn opened the binder that had printed itself hours earlier. The pages fanned out like evidence in a courtroom. Screenshots, message threads, a Slack log showing Mason's thumbs-up emoji sitting above the attached HR flag Emily Behavior Report Confidential PDF. He turned another page timestamps, policy excerpts, signatures Mason's, Helena's, and Robert Wilmot's, the CEO's, Clause 12.43, highlighted in yellow. Linda broke the silence. Joint liability. If this stands, HR and the executive office share exposure. Helena's voice cracked. It's a misunderstanding. The file was a mistake. And the complaint, Dawn cut her off, was handled without neutral arbitration. You signed off anyway. Harris exhaled through his teeth. Get the CEO. Now. Helena's hand shook as she reached for her phone. He's in transit. Then call him in transit. Harris snapped. Dawn pushed the binder toward her. Read page 12 before he arrives. It's the part where the clause explains personal liability. Outside, the hallway was silent. I sat perfectly still, hearing nothing but the hum of the air vents. Someone passed behind me. Then another whispers. Shoes moving faster than usual. The door opened briefly. Harris's voice spilled out, low but heavy. We'll need external counsel if this leaks. Dawn's reply was calm. It won't need to leak. The system already notified compliance regulators. I folded my hands in my lap. Steady. I didn't need to see inside that room to know what was happening. The wall was cracking. All I had to do was wait for gravity. The door slammed open hard enough to rattle the blinds. Robert Wilmot stormed in, face flushed, tie askew. His voice filled the beige room like thunder. What is this witch hunt, he barked. You dragged my son into compliance hell over a clerical glitch. No one answered. Don Sayre remained seated, calm behind the open binder. The CFO stood near the window, silent. Mason sat at the far end of the table, pale now, the arrogance gone from his posture. Robert, Don said evenly, we have a verified breach of HR confidentiality, an unreviewed harassment claim, and 3 signatures tying leadership directly to a conflict of interest. Clause 12.4.3 is active. Robert slammed his palm on the table. That clause was never meant for this. Don turned a page, showing the highlighted paragraph. It was meant for exactly this. Helena tried to speak. We can manage it internally. Harris cut her off. Internal is over. Compliance already received the auto forward. The CEO's eyes darted from face to face, looking for someone to blame. Then they found me. I stepped inside quietly, closing the door behind me. The room stilled. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Robert's tone dropped an octave. You started this. I met his gaze. I followed procedure. Dawn nodded slightly. She did. You violated it. Mason stood, voice unsteady. Dad. I didn't mean Robert snapped. Enough, but his voice cracked. I looked at Mason. You wanted an apology. He blinked. Confused. I let the words fall clean and sharp. You'll get one from the system you built. No one moved. Dawn closed the binder. Helena lowered her eyes. Harris finally exhaled. The CEO sank into the nearest chair, shoulders sagging under the weight of his own rules. Outside, through the glass, I could see the first reporters gathering by the lobby doors. The verdict had already begun writing itself. I printed my resignation letter on company letterhead, the same kind I had used for policy drafts and audit summaries. 1 page, no embellishment, no bitterness. I seek no settlement or silence, only acknowledgement. Let the record show who knew, and who chose to do nothing. When I handed it to Don Sir, he read it twice. His mouth tightened at the line about silence. Then he nodded. You'll get your acknowledgement, he said quietly. I already have it, I replied. By noon, Mason's badge was deactivated. The security team didn't make a scene. They never do when the name is powerful. One moment his access worked, the next, it didn't. Word spread fast, faster than the truth behind it. Helena was placed on leave before 3, escorted out with a cardboard box and a trembling smile. Someone in HR whispered that she would be transitioned to another company under the same holding group. That was Wilmot's way of cleaning quietly. Robert Wilmot canceled all afternoon meetings. The CFO took control of internal communications. I saw the memo before I left, words crafted to sound brave, but built from fear. A week later, Wilmot Freight posted on LinkedIn. An internal whistleblower has inspired company-wide reform. We are committed to transparency and integrity in all employee matters. No names. Of course. But everyone knew. On my last day, I walked through the same hallway where I had once trained interns, through the glass atrium that had reflected Mason's arrogance just weeks earlier. My hands were empty. No farewell lunch. No box of things. No ceremony. Danny met me by the exit. Her eyes were red but steady. You did it, she whispered. I shook my head. No. The system did exactly what it promised. For once. Outside, the afternoon light cut sharp across the pavement. I paused, feeling the air shift, not relief, not victory, just something lighter than before. I had no title, no desk, no paycheck, but I carried what mattered, proof that the truth, once documented, doesn't ask a permission to be seen.